Era. I don't know DC Hogg's email address. When I was dealing with him, I was still computer illiterate. But for heaven's sake, keep trying to get him on the phone. I can't imagine why he hasn't been available. Heather Green is, for the most part, a peaceful village. Obviously, you can't stay indoors forever, but neither can you live in constant terror of being thrown into empty swimming pools by a perpetrator unknown. Using your son-in-law St. John's veterinarian tranquilizer gun to defend yourself was an inspiration. But if you go round firing it off by mistake like that, the whole of Shagthorne, both little and great, will be asleep. How is your poor son Howard now? It is the weekend here in Australia. I suppose it is in England too, but once again I feel so far away, which I am, that I find it hard to imagine that it still exists. Thank heavens for the email, such a lifeline. My daughter Leslie and her partner Brian have gone away for a couple of days, leaving me with the usual expressed breast milk in the fridge and in sole charge of my 2 granddaughters. Leslie and Brian have been having problems, apparently, and need to be alone to remind themselves quite what they saw in each other in the first place. Honestly, if they can't remember after this short time, what on earth are their memories going to be like when they get to our age? And how terrible to break up Brian's marriage and then wonder if they'd done the right thing. But that's typical of Leslie. She's always been faddy. Sometimes I wonder if our generation wasn't so elated that the war was over and so determined that our children should inherit a brave new world with free this and free that. All we succeeded in doing was to spoil them and give them unreasonable expectations of life. I mean, what would Winston Churchill make of things if he was still with us? He must be rolling in his grave. Baby Bubbles is crying for a 4 a.m. feed, so I must stop. I'm exhausted but can't seem to sleep. Too much worry. The good news, though, is that the airline have finally found my luggage. It wasn't in Kuala Lumpur but Helsinki, so at least I now recognise myself when I look in the mirror. I looked a real sight in Leslie's crop tops. Reply soon, old friend. I'm so lonely. Love, Irene.
Vera's Voyages at littleshag.com. Dear Irene, your email made my heart bleed. Oh, I do so know what you mean about being lonely. Sometimes it's at its worst when you're in the bosom of your family. I said as much straight to camera on Dale's TV's A Life with Sheep yesterday. The camera crew were almost in tears. Howard was furious with me. I'd come out for a visit. I'd love to see Oz after all your tales, though St. Urban doesn't sound quite as exotic as India, but I'm absolutely indispensable here. My daughter Karen's in hospital for the foreseeable future. She made so much fuss about privacy, they've moved her to her own room, for which, of course, St. John is paying. He, poor lamb, is rushed off his feet with 2 veterinarian surgeries a day and all the outreach visits. He's had to go back several times to see my son Howard and his partner Anthony's surrogate mother. Trouble with the syringe or something. But the good news is they are at last pregnant. Howard is over the moon. Now he and Anthony are arguing about which of their little squiggles did it. As they've got a result, TV parlance, and everyone's smiling again, Dale's TV are back. The director, a nice lad despite his stubble, said I was wasted behind the scenes and I should get in front of the camera. I took to it like a natural. I don't know that I've ever confided to you, but when I was a girl I longed to tread the boards. Of course, my father would never have tolerated it. To him an actress was no different from a prostitute. It was only because his local pub was called the Nell Gwyn. It was a notorious haunt of ladies of the night. I often wondered if he felt so strongly about them why he went there. Now, Irene, I'm saying this for your own good. Do not go back to the bottle. No matter how desperate you feel, resist it, old friend, or it's not only Winston Churchill who'll be rolling around in his grave. I know he's one of your heroes, but there are some of his footsteps in which you wouldn't want to follow. Needless to say, I mean the above in a loving, caring way. Your own Vera.
Karen at greatshag.com. Dear Leslie, what's happening with boring Brian? Have you made it up or kicked him out? Things have improved in here since I got the private room. I'm allowed to move about as long as I don't leave the hospital. As if. I can't bear the idea of going back to the bothy. It's too full of singeing and the bloody kids. Seriously thinking of running away as soon as I've dumped this one. They'd be much happier with Ma looking after them. 'Course she loves it, keeps going on about being needed. Send us a mail soon. I'm so bored. Karen.
Irene at osmail.com. Dear Vera, you may down-cry Sir Winston all you like, but just ask yourself in a quiet moment what he would have said about your son-in-law St. John, who, lest we forget, is a vet, not a gynecologist, impregnating a paid stranger on television with a syringe full of semen from 2 homosexuals, one of which is your own son, so that she may bring forth this strange fruit and hand it over for cash to said deviants to bring up. Personally, I would fight them on the beaches every time. Instead, you encourage it. And you say that the good news is that they've succeeded. Call me old-fashioned if you will, but who can the little mite call mother when it's born? Meanwhile, here in Melbourne, I'm having to cope with a new granddaughter born out of wedlock because my daughter Leslie couldn't keep her hands off another woman's husband. I'm just left feeling that the more time goes by, the more of my life seems to have been in vain. However, nil desperado Irene has always been my battle cry, and to this end I managed to have a good long chat with Brian, Leslie's partner, the other evening, on our own while Leslie was resting. Though goodness knows what she's got to be tired about, I seem to be the only one to notice when little Bubbles needs feeding or changing. But back to my main thrust. I managed finally, after some subtle hyperbole, thank heavens for my creative writing course, to fire Brian up enough to promise to push through his divorce with all his vim and vigour to a speedy conclusion. I made him hold little Bubbles in his arms and swear on her dear little golden head that he would make her legitimate, albeit retrospectfully. He's been out and bought Leslie a socking great engagement ring at vast expense, which he showed me today in secret, with tears in his eyes, and he's going to propose officially at the weekend. This, Vera, is what I think of as the role of the responsible mother, whatever her age, guiding her children towards a more wholesome lifestyle, not giddily encouraging them to go their own way as you do with yours. For instance, if a son of mine had told me he was gay in his confused early years, I would have explained to him that it was just a whim and not something that had to be acted upon. I would have reminded him of those old-fashioned notions, willpower and self-denial. I would have introduced him to every eligible girl within a 50-mile radius of Great Shagthorn, and if they had failed to raise a response, I would have told him just to keep his hand on his halfpenny. One thing I would definitely not have done would be to egg him on about artificial insemination, but that is obviously where we differ. Once more, I shall gloss over your allusions to my so-called drinking habit. Honestly, talk about the pot calling the kettle. You may have chosen to forget who it was who had 17 long, slow screws in Mallorca when we were on our tour of Europe, but I certainly haven't. Nor have I forgotten the consequences, but I shall not go down that alley just now. I shall merely say Manolo and leave you to weave your way unsteadily down memory lane. Naturally, it goes without saying that I too mean everything aforementioned in the most loving and caring way, but of course a lot of your behaviour clicks into place now I know your father frequented a bawdy house. Nobody would argue that it was a nice beginning for you, Vera, but if you're determined to try, you can rise above the nasty bits in your gene pool. With all loving and friendly wishes, Irene.
Vera's Voyages at littleshag.com. Dear Irene, you know where you can stuff your loving and friendly wishes. Vera.
Karen at greatshag.com. Dear Leslie, I hear you're going to marry boring Brian after all. Ma showed me a rambling email Irene had sent her when she'd obviously had a few tinnies too many. We noticed she was back on the sauce when she was here. Anyway, girl, she reckons Brian's bought you a socking great engagement ring. So don't go giving him back to his wife till you've got it safely on your finger. I haven't got a wedding ring on mine anymore. My finger had puffed up like a black pudding and the triage nurse had to sew it off. Ring, not finger. Think it's an omen? Brett, the triage nurse, is a mate of Howard and Anthony's and a real pet. Pops in to share a spliff and has promised to sneak me some pharmaceutical Charlie. St. John won't give me Class A's and has even tried to get me off the weed while I'm sprogging, a sanctimonious bastard. Karen.
Howard and Anthony at sheepshag.com. Dear Irene, my mother showed me your last email, which had us all in tears. Anthony and I were shocked to the fundament at your medieval attitudes. Haven't you ever watched Queer as Folk? Not that Great Shagthorne is exactly a gay village, more's the pity. Your comments were especially hurtful after the way we've always welcomed you here. Last time, if I remember rightly, you said we were gorgeous boys and you wished we were your sons. You even encouraged us to try for adoption, saying why not? We were just like a married couple. Of course, by then you had had the greater part of 2 bottles of Sheep Dipper's Chardonnay. We can only conclude you've joined that band of losers darling Tony Blair calls the forces of conservatism who read The Sun and are deeply homophobic. Age is no excuse for embracing the attitudes of Hitler, even if the last war is still your yardstick. Mother may have other foibles, but she's remarkably open and tolerant about sex. Things she told us about your travels together, which at the time we were inclined to disbelieve, now make perfect sense. The only Manolo she remembers, by the way, was a bartender over whom you threw a jug of sangria. I dare say you will find excuses for all of this, but they will fall on deaf ears at Sheep Dippers. It's such a pity, as we were going to invite you to be godmother to our baby when he/she is born. But now we're going to get a lesbian friend from Stonewall. Howard.
Dear Vera and Howard, got your emails and I'm in a torment of retribution. I read mine again. Think I went over the top. Please forget and forgive. Don't know what got into me. If I had a hair shirt, I'd be wearing it. Sometimes I wonder if I'm not a little bit depressed. Yours, penitentiarily, Irene. Howard, I have been in a torment of agony since I emailed my apology to you both a few days ago and having heard nothing in return. Did you get the flowers I sent yet, Howard? And Vera, have you received the cookery book I found for you, 101 Ways to Serve Kangaroo Imaginatively? I'm not fishing for gratitude, merely checking. As always, I have found some solace in the creative arts and send you this poem which woke me up in the middle of the night, demanding to be penned. I hope and pray that it may go some way to stop me being a persona non gratis in your eyes. I really do value our friendship and hope and pray that it does not continue to be erstwhile. With a heart filled with shame, Irene. An Ode by Irene Spencer. They say that all the world's a stage, and we mere players on it. So your humble servant, I, Irene, give you this modest sonnet. I wish that I could turn back time and have never ever sent the email, writ impulsively, in which my rage was spent. Dear Vera Small, and Howard too, that sweet fruit of your loins, if apologies were money, I would shower you both with coins. Please look at me with love again, and don't be filled with hate. Excuses are empty, as I know, but I've not been too well of late.
Vera's Voyages at littleshag.com. Dear Irene, I have pondered long and hard on whether to accept your apology, albeit put off by the appalling doggerel. I do hope you're not throwing good money away on this creative writing course. I was in such a quandary about it, I even emailed my global network for advice. It seems to have struck a chord. I downloaded lots of replies. Obviously, a plethora of people feel abused by their so-called friends. My Indian pals Raj and Shiva, boys@bumchums.com, think I should definitely forgive you. They say it will bring me good karma. But there again, every beggar in India will promise you that for 20 rupees. Yasmin, remember Yasmin, my next-door neighbour on the trailer park, psychic@farshores.com, gave you an absent tarot reading and came up with the Queen of Cups. She's the one holding a large wine glass and surrounded by flagons. She says to leave that with you. Even silly old Edward Blunt, your erstwhile suitor, blunt@foulshag.com, stuck in his oar, or should I say straw. He says you've kept your hand on your own halfpenny for so long. I've no idea how he knows. You haven't noticed there's been devaluation. After many sleepless nights, answering the dratted email, I finally decided to excuse your behaviour. It is, as our long history demonstrates, ingrained in my nature. Besides, I know the sort of things you get up to when you're depressed, and I couldn't bear to have that on my conscience. My son Howard and his partner Anthony say thank you for the bouquet of birds of paradise. They're an outlandish sight in Great Shagthorn, but I dare say they are common or garden, perhaps literally, in Australia. Anyway, they have pride of place by the four-poster bed in a heritage-style milking bucket, and the boys say to tell you they had a lot of fun with the spiky bits. I'm enclosing a booklet my granddaughter Sabrina brought home from school on sex education, which reminds me 101 Ways with a Kangaroo went straight in the bin. If this explanatory little work persuades playground bullies to behave like fully functioning citizens, which I doubt, Sabrina is called all sorts of names because she has short hair and likes football, it may have the same effect on you. At least it will provide an alternative to your blind, cliché-ridden prejudices. All for now. Must stop and do something important, like work on my recipe book proposal. I advise you to do something practical next time you feel a poem coming on. Vera.
Irene@osmail.com. Dear Vera, thank you for your email at last. I can't tell you how relieved I am that we are speaking again. And thank you for the very informative booklet on sex education. I learnt more perusing that for half an hour than I have hitherto learnt in a lifetime. I'm rather cross with Edward Blunt, though, for being so indiscreet on my behalf. And as always, there are two sides to that story. All I was after was friendship, but it appears he had other things on his mind which I kept trying to ignore. You remember finding his truss in your apartment after I'd been staying there. I'd just popped out to make some tea, and when I returned to the living room, he was in his birthday suit, lolling on the chaise lounge. I was so shocked I dropped his cup in his lap, hence, after a lot of agonised hopping about and blue language, his hasty departure and forgetfulness in the underwear department. I'm not normally prone to depression, as you know, except when I'm in Australia. It seems I travel all those thousands of miles each time just to be ignored by my daughter and treated like a maid of all work. Of course, it's wonderful to see my grandchildren, just not every minute of every day. I have been worrying, too, about the mystery man stalker that I left behind me in Blighty. My next-door neighbour Beryl wrote to me last week, telling me she'd seen him again hanging around my house. Did you ever get to speak to DC Hogg of Heather Green CID? Do please try again if you haven't. Please give my love to Howard and Anthony, and say I'm glad they like the flowers. You don't mention if you tried making any of the dishes before you binned the kangaroo book. Heavens, you must have been cross with me. I've never known you look a gift horse in the mouth before. Baby Bubbles is crying to be changed, and it's almost time to collect Cheryl Marie from school, so I'll have to finish. Yours in haste and heartfelt gratitude, Irene, XX.
Vera's Voyages at littleshag.com. Dear Irene, I've been wondering what had happened to the mystery man. I haven't seen him at all since the swimming pool incident. In fact, I've rather missed him. I felt we'd established a bond. I tried DC Hogg again, but although I left another message, he didn't return my call. No wonder the police are always calling for extra resources. So I dropped the enclosed note to him. I'm so glad you discovered the truth about Edward Blunt before you got too involved. I didn't like to say so before, but I had a similar problem with him. We'd been to a countryside alliance rally where Edward was making a speech in support of fox hunting. He is, when all's said and done, a poultry farmer. Edward got carried away with all the cheering and backslapping and waving of the St. George's flag, and when taking me home threw me on my back in the poultry van and attempted to have his way with me. Fortunately, he'd had one too many old peculiars, and I was able to fend him off quite easily. I shoved a knee in his crutch, hence the truss, and crowned him with a chicken basket. While he was rolling around in foul droppings, I gave him a piece of my mind. And whatever he said, that's all I gave him. I'm afraid he spends too much time with his cockerels. Must stop now and do the washing, ironing, gardening and cooking, while Sabrina is at school and Nelson is tied to his playpen. We had to stop using the baby bouncer. His legs are so long he kept hitting the ceiling. No time for depression. Love, Vera. P.S. Retrieved the kangaroo book from the bin and experimented with braised sweetbreads. We found it more of a snack than a meal. Perhaps on a kangaroo they are larger. The Coach House Apartment, The Bothy, Long Lane, Little Shagthorne, Darbs. Dear D.C. Hogg, you may have been puzzled by the string of expletives left on your voicemail, but having tried many times to contact you by telephone, I'm afraid I was overcome by frustration. I was calling on behalf of my old acquaintance Irene Spencer, who claims she was being plagued by a mystery man stalker before her recent departure for Australia. I, too, have had sightings of this mystery man in my home village of Little Shagthorne, and am therefore in a position to give you an unbiased description. He is tall, in the prime of life, about 40, with a youthful complexion, golden locks and a lovely smile. Far from being threatening, he is kind and chivalrous. Indeed, I was rescued by him from an unfortunate accident. If it hadn't been for his prompt action, I might have languished at the bottom of a muddy pit for days. But like a prince in a fairy tale, he disappeared before I could thank him. I understand, though one has to take everything Irene says with a pinch of salt, he has been sighted back in Heather Green. If you can fit reading this letter and apprehending him into your busy schedule, I'd like to be the first to know. Do please contact me at the above address if I can be of further assistance. Yours very sincerely, Vera Small.
Irene at osmail.com. Dear Vera, Karen and St. John and little Sabrina and baby boy Nelson, Howard and Anthony, rejoice, rejoice. My daughter Leslie is finally engaged to be married to Mr. Brian Benbow of St. Urban, Melbourne. Excitedly yours, proud mum Irene, XXXXXXX.
Room 6, Blair Ward, Princess Diana Memorial Wing, Great Shagthorne Cottage Hospital. Dear Irene, penning a quick notelet while waiting for Karen to come round from anaesthetic. She was safely delivered of a little girl at 4 a.m. this morning. St. John was woken at 2 a.m. by an emergency call, and we rushed to the hospital to watch them perform a caesarean section. Fascinating. Karen made a great fuss, howling and thrashing, and when St. John offered her his hand, she bit it. I pointed out to her that it would be a great deal worse if she had to go through proper labour. As it was, the triage nurse gave her an injection which knocked her out, and all she has to deal with is a few stitches. As the baby is so premature, she was taken straight to an incubator. Fortunately, they still have them in the private wing. She's absolutely sweet, though very small, not a bit like Nelson. So, my dear, we both have reason to celebrate. I'm so pleased for you that Leslie is engaged at last. I've read between the lines and know that with your straight-laced views you found the situation there humiliating and embarrassing. When exactly are they getting married? Anyway, St. John, Howard and I send congratulations, as will Karen when she surfaces. Oh, I can hear some stirrings from the bed. Oh, it was just Karen demanding another injection. I managed to tell her Leslie's news, but all she said was poor cow. When I asked her if she'd thought of an appropriate name for the baby, she muttered F-word millennium. Of course, she's still very groggy. If she sticks to it, we'll all call the little scrap Millie. Lots of love from all of us to all of you. Kiss, kiss, Vera.
Irene at osmail.com. Congratulations, Granny Small, you've done it again. Leslie's wedding, 13th of next month. I'm so excited. You're all invited. Would love to have you over to help with the catering if Karen can spare you. Lots of love, Irene X. On the Birth of Your New Baby by Irene Spencer. Congratulations, Karen dear. Sing ho, sing high, sing hey. For unto you is born a girl this bright and sunny day. May blessings fall upon your heads and all your dreams come true. These flowers and these kisses are with love from me to you. Irene XX. Irene at osmail.com. Vera, wedding off. Don't come. I'm in despair. Irene.
Dear Irene, I'm so excited about your daughter's wedding in Australia too. Every time I look at Vera's voyages on my email address, I think it's high time I went on another one. I could certainly do with a break from the bothy. I work 14 hours without even the minimum wage. Gone are the days when being over 60 meant welcome retirement. My daughter Karen won't be able to come, much as she'd like to, as she has to stay and feed little Millie, who's still in the incubator. Karen's grumbling that she's nothing but a milking machine. Her husband St. John can't take the time off, and my grandson Nelson is far too much of a handful, so it'll be just me and my granddaughter Sabrina. I'll have to get a full fare ticket for her. She's so tall and tomboyish you won't recognise her. Hope I'll be able to persuade her out of her football boots for the wedding. Later, have searched the World Wide Web for travel arrangements and come up with bomb.com, which is offering flights at miraculously low prices. All being well, Sabrina and I will be with you on the 10th, in good time for me to give you a hand with the catering. In the meantime, I've attached a favourite recipe. You should be able to get the ingredients, and it's ever so easy. Even for an amateur. Lots of love, Vera. Curried bananas. Bananas, ginger wine, garlic, chilli powder. Marinate bananas overnight, then pop in the oven for 20 minutes. Or, if you're feeling brave, flambe.
Karen at greatshag.com. Dear Leslie, gutted I won't be at your wedding. Are you sure you know what you're doing? I said keep the ring, not Brian. Anyway, lots of luck, girl. Karen.
Leslie at osmail.com. Dear Karen, what are you going on about? I have kept the ring and dumped Brian. Mum's going demented about it. So what else is new? Leslie X.
Irene at osmail.com. Vera, didn't you get my last email? I said the wedding's off and not to come. Don't tell me you've bought your tickets already or I'll never forgive myself. Reply immediately, marked urgent. I need to know whether to worry or not. Yours in desperation of newfangled methods of so-called communication, Irene.
Vera's voyages at littleshag.com. Urgent. Dear Irene. No, I didn't get your last email. Are you sure it wasn't in your return mail? My recipe book proposal came back saying service undeliverable. So, taking advantage of the remarkable discounts offered on the net, I booked and paid for the plane tickets. Needless to say, bomb.com won't consider a refund. I'm sure it's not Brian who's called it off after all he's promised. Don't you think your daughter Leslie's just having an attack of pre-wedding jitters? She probably needs a good talking to about shouldering her responsibilities, and I'm sure between us we can deliver it. There's baby Bubbles to consider, to say nothing of the trouble and expense all their guests have been to. I've spent a fortune on a hyacinth pink silk two-piece with matching petal hat. Of course I'll get the wear out of it on my next Dale's TV appearance, but still. So, we'll be with you on the 10th as planned. I shall copy and paste this into my letter format now and put it in the post to be absolutely sure you get it. You're quite right. No matter how despised by modernisers, the tried and trusted methods are best. Love from us all, and a bracing thump for Leslie, V.
My bedroom, Byron Street, St Urban, Melbourne, Australia. Dear Vera, by the time you read this, you will be sitting here in my bedroom and I will be on a plane back to Blighty. Tried emailing and phoning to stop you, but you'd already left Little Shagthorne. Why on earth did you think it would take you 2 days to get to the airport? I've heard of leaving in plenty of time, but really? Have had an absolute bombshell dropped into my life. See attached letter from Beryl next door in Heather Green. She always goes in to water plants when I'm away, and to switch lights on and off and open and close curtains in a stimulation of me being in residence. Don't know what I'm going to walk into when I get back. My poor little house. Now tell me I was overreacting about the mystery man stalker if you dare. But character judgment has never been your greatest strength. No time now. I'm flinging things in suitcase as I write, hence the scribble. Make yourself completely at home while you're here. What's mine is yours, as you know, which most likely, if I know my daughter Leslie, will mean full childcare duties and all housekeeping, cleaning and cooking. See if you can drum some sense into her about marrying Brian, and feel absolutely free to deliver that bracing thump you mentioned in your last. Ill wind! Had a small win on Tats Lotto this week, Australia's national lottery, so will be buying myself a computer when I pass through Kuala Lumpur duty-free on my way home. We'll let you know my new email address, and you should get Leslie to give you one while you're here. Love to Sabrina. Little Cheryl Marie is dying to meet her. More soon, in haste and trepidation, Irene. Fort to the Limes, Heather Green. Dear Irene, I'm ever so sorry to tell you you've been broken into. I was taken badly again and had to go into hospital for a couple of days with my bottom, so wasn't doing the usual with the curtains and lights. Got back to a bomb site. Police got your door boarded up. It had been kicked in. Your telly's gone and your video, but I can't tell what else as it's such a mess. I'm sending you the red notice from the border-uppers. They've been round in person to try to get their money from me, but I couldn't afford to pay them on my pension. Apparently they got let down a lot, what with the police calling them in and then people not paying, so their new company policy is to rip the boarding down again if they don't get their money within a week. Can you come home? Otherwise, I may as well put a notice up over your door telling people to help themselves, let alone the weather coming into your lounge. Haven't told you the worst. That chap who I've seen hanging around and who roped through your dustbin that time was seen running off after the break-in by Betty Slapper up the street. Last night, coming home from bingo, I saw him and screamed burglar. Instead of running away, he came over, bold as brass, and said to tell you he's got your stuff in safekeeping. Have told police, and they're waiting for a ransom notice. They're flummoxed. They've never heard of a telly being kidnapped before. Can you bring me cherry brandy from duty-free this time? I've gone off Midori. Yours faithfully, Beryl next door.
Vera's Voyages at osmail.com. Dear St John and Karen, amazed to arrive and find Irene already gone. Rather put out after a 3-day journey. No wonder bomb.com was so insistent about getting to the airport early. It was like a rugger scrum to get onto the plane. Then we had to wait while they put the door back on. Irene had left a note insisting that she'd tried to email and phone about her change of plans, but as Leslie has subsequently confided, owing to a recurrence of her old trouble, she is getting increasingly forgetful. Apparently she is now convinced that her mystery man stalker has broken into her home and stolen her video for ransom purposes. It seems unlikely. I await her next communication with dread. Goodness knows what fanciful explanation she'll dream up. In the meantime, Leslie has made us very welcome. What a charming girl she is, not a bit like Irene's descriptions of her. I can see exactly why she doesn't want to marry Brian. He's fat and bald and 20 years her senior. More importantly, his .com shares have taken a nosedive, and what with the alimony he has to pay, he's unable to provide Leslie with any of the promised comforts. She has kept the engagement ring, a large solitaire, and the hot tub in the garden. We've all had a lot of fun in that, though Sabrina does like to play rough with Cheryl Marie. Must stop, I can hear splashing and screaming from the garden. Later. Sabrina was holding Cheryl Marie's head under water again. Although they're the same age, Cheryl Marie is tiny and very feminine, and of course she wasn't brought up on a trailer park. Baby Bubbles is going to be another little beauty. She's as good as her golden hair. She obviously doesn't get that from Brian, and much less demanding than my grandson Nelson. Hope you're not finding looking after him too arduous, Karen. Still, you got plenty of rest lying on your back for a month in hospital. All love, V/mother.
Leslie@osmail.com. Karen, what the bloody hell is going on? Just got rid of my mum and yours pulls up to stay. Do something. Mum's found out she's been burgled at home and was like a headless chicken till she left. Couldn't stand it anymore, so made some hash cookies to calm her down. Course, she's one of the tiny few it just makes hyper and paranoid, and I ended up wishing I hadn't bothered. She was practically climbing the walls. Suppose I should have learned my lesson last time she had some of my dope by mistake and I had to put her in the loony bin. Seriously, if your mother's thinking of staying here, I'm coming over to you. I'd got a new bloke I'd been gagging for lined up for tonight, and I thought at last I could bring him home. Yours, demented. I swear to God it's catching. Leslie.
Irene at thelimes.heathergreen.com. Dear Leslie, Vera, Cheryl Marie, Bubbles and Sabrina, how very odd to be writing to you all together. Arrived home in a chaos of emotion, having flown for 24 sleepless hours, completely wide awake and rigid with tension. Couldn't eat a thing on the plane, it all looked as if it would poison me. Thank heavens for those delicious little Mary Warner cakes you sent me off with, Leslie, otherwise I might have starved. You must show the recipe to Vera and see if she wants to include it in her book. Got here wrung out, dreading worst, finding the inexplicable. Too tired to go into it now, but wanted to let you have my new email address. Bought smashing little laptop, marvellous price, thoroughly recommend Chung Chang's cheap computers in Kuala Lumpur duty-free. Must sleep. Can't go on any longer. Would love to tell you of miracle and coming home to dream instead of nightmare, but I'm still feeling strange. So good to have the blood back in my legs, though. I could feel the benefit as soon as we were on the right side of the equator. Got to stop. Eyes closing. Neck like red-hot poker. Love, Irene/mum/granny. XXXZZZZ.
Vera's Voyages at osmail.com. Dear Irene, the blood certainly rushed to my head on receipt of an email from my son-in-law, St. John. My daughter Karen has absconded with the triage nurse. Poor little Millie is an abandoned child before she's out of the incubator. Don't talk to me about chaos of emotion. St. John, with his schedule, has to rush to the hospital several times a day to feed the poor little mite with expressed breast milk. Only hope he remembers to defrost it. Baby Nelson has had to be farmed out to my son Howard and his partner Anthony on their sheep farm. Goodness knows how they'll manage with a herd of sheep as well. Looking after Nelson is a full-time job. Still, I suppose it'll be good practice for when they get their own baby. As you can imagine, I was poleaxed, but lovely Leslie came to the rescue. She said much as she would miss me, I was obviously needed at home straight away. She rushed around organising flights, has done all our packing, and is now in the kitchen baking some Mary Warner cakes for the journey. She says to send you her love and tell you she'll give me the recipe. Love, except I'll probably never feel it again, especially for Karen, Vera.
Karen at globetrotter.com. Dear Leslie, well, you did say do something. Love, Karen.
green.com, dear Vera. Trust you are safely ensconced back at Little Shagthorn now and have taken control of the family situation. Has anybody heard from your daughter Karen yet? Imagine being able to abandon a newborn baby. She must be completely distraught about something. She's normally such a lovely girl. I find it hard to believe that she is in any kind of romantic entanglement with the triage nurse who disappeared with her. He's a friend of your son Howard and his partner Anthony, isn't he? So surely he's of the other persuasion. Perhaps they've just gone shopping. I have been having shock after shock back home in Heather Green. I returned, as you know, expecting to find mayhem after Beryl next door's letter telling me about the break-in. And instead I found everything looking lovely. The front door had been put back on its hinges, everywhere had been hoovered and dusted, and there was the most wonderful flower arrangement from Flora's Tributes, very posh florist in nearby Monkston Magnar. Naturally, I assumed it was Beryl I had to thank, so imagine my surprise, not to mention utter discombobulation, when I took a cherry brandy round to thank her and she said that all she had done was to let the cleaners in. What cleaners, I hear you ask, as indeed did I. The cleaners you arranged to come in and tidy up, she said. She's a nice woman, but very simple. But I sent no cleaners, said I, and Vera, I didn't. I've emailed your son-in-law St. John, as it's just the sort of kind thing he would arrange, but he replied saying it wasn't him. He does sound lost without Karen. Do please give him a motherly hug from me. I've been all round the village asking, but nobody knows a thing. I even emailed Edward Blunt, our one-time would-be poultry farming paramour, wondering if he might perhaps be refining his seduction techniques, but he just sent me a foul reply, if you'll forgive the pun, saying that cleaning was what women are for. I won't pass on what he went on to say that men are supposed to be for, but suffice it to say it's nothing useful in the housekeeping department. I am now left with the unlikely scenario that I was broken into and burgled by the mystery man stalker who Beryl saw hanging around my back entrance, and then cleaned up again by person or persons unknown, as DC Hogg has filed in his report. My TV and video are still missing, as is, most upsettingly, my wedding photo. Why would they want that, other than to be hurtful? They'd get nothing for it, the frame wasn't even antique. I told you, didn't I, that Beryl saw the mystery man on her way back from bingo, and he told her he had my things in safe keeping. Since this is the most dramatic crime Heather Green has ever known, CID have wired me for sound, and I am supposed to go about my business wearing a little microphone in my lapel and a battery pack strapped to my thigh in case he approaches me. It makes walking very awkward and crossing my legs an impossibility. And it's all very well for Hogg and his associates to get excited about it. They keep talking about offering to meet him in a field in just their underpants. What is it about men? But I feel like a lonely little lamb who's been put out as a lure for the big bad wolf. I carry a Jif lemon with me now wherever I go in case of attack. Anyway, dear, enough about me and my worries. Poor you, going all the way to Australia and then having to turn round and come straight back. You must be exhausted. Not to mention being terrified about the welfare of your missing daughter. If there's anything I can do to help find her, particularly now that I'm wired for sound, don't hesitate to let me know. But for all our worries, isn't it nice to be back home in Blighty? Much love, Irene X.
Vera's Voyages at littleshag.com. Dear Irene, I'm sorry to have been a while replying, but what with unpacking, washing, cleaning, and the computer being down, something about brown ale being spilled on it, everything's been more topsy-turvy since I got back than when I was in Australia. Far from the cleaners having been in, the whole of the bothy was strewn with takeaway cartons, empty beer bottles and cigarette butts, which is odd, as St. John isn't a smoker. There were discarded clothes everywhere, all the beds had been used, and the sheets and pillows thrown all over the place. Quite honestly, if it had been anyone but St. John, I'd suspect there'd been an orgy. His explanation is that he didn't have time to change the beds, so just took it in turns to sleep in them. A mother-in-law's job is never done, and jet-lagged as I was, I had to get straight to the hoovering. Fortunately, the return journey was a lot faster with Ripper No Frills Airline, which was just as well as they took no frills to the limit and didn't provide any lavatories or sustenance. I'd just popped the last Mary Warner cake into my mouth. They really are delicious. I'll be trying out the recipe when we put down in Dubai for a stopover in their fabulous duty-free. I wandered, entranced by the multicoloured garments and mouth-watering scents, and found myself buying a cornucopia of presents. My granddaughter Sabrina got a David Beckham football cap complete with streaked blonde floppy hair extensions. She thought it looked funny perched on top of her head, but as I pointed out, no funnier than it used to do on his. While I stocked up on the exotic foods and herbs I didn't have a chance to buy in St. Urban. With enough tots at home to open a nursery, I went completely overboard on the designer baby clothes. They had the most marvellous accessories as well, and I couldn't resist some fluffy pale pink and blue pashminas. My son Howard and his partner Anthony claimed them both straight away on the grounds that their baby-to-be might be either sex, but later I saw them wearing them in Great Shagthorne Tesco's. No word at all from Karen, and the boys are absolutely mystified. Howard's convinced their friend Brett, the triage nurse she's run off with, is anything but straight, and what's more, he's got the photos to prove it. Apparently, the local tourist board has been running a campaign to promote Great Shagthorne as the gay capital of the Dales, and as part of a Mardi Gras weekend, Dales TV ran a take-home-a-tranny competition. Brett took first prize, impersonating Posh Spice, wearing a mini-slip he'd made himself from £50 notes. As Howard said, goodness knows how he managed that on the pay of a triage nurse. I've taken over the care of my granddaughter, little Millie, now she's allowed out of the incubator for a few hours. Anthony's made her a darling little sheepskin papoose, and it's the envy of all the other mothers. I've just come back from a brisk trot in the hospital grounds with baby Millie on my back, pitbull terrier Rex on his lead, and grandson Nelson in his pushchair. At this rate, I'll never need to take up yoga. I do hope you've solved the Heather Green mysteries. Sounds like one for your creative writing course, doesn't it? I'm sure you don't miss the wedding photo, but you must be lost without your TV and video. Mail me soon with the next instalment. I'm hooked. Love, Vera. P.S. Do beware while you're wired for sound. Who on earth's on the other end when you're spending a penny?
Irene at thelimes.heathergreen.com. Dear Vera, thank you for your long and newsy email, albeit tardy. I had to get my dictionary out to understand half of what you were on about, and even now I am none the wiser for its hallucidation. What is a pashmina? You mentioned them before when you were in India, and I thought at the time perhaps it must be something to eat, given that that seems to be your preoccupation these days. But now I'm not so sure. As you say, Howard and Anthony have been wearing them to do the shopping. Likewise, tranny, which I always thought was slang for transistor radio. I remember that Leslie nagged us all through her teen years for one. Couldn't find it in the dictionary, so asked Beryl next door, and she said it's somebody like Danny LaRue. So, let me get this straight. Your gay son Howard says that his sister Karen has run off with Brett, the triage nurse who likes to wear ladies' dresses. No signs so far of the mystery man. I'm feeling a bit exposed because Beryl next door's back in hospital with her bottom. Don't ask, I did, and honestly, after a 2-hour monologue, I was heaving. So if he did appear, there would be nobody to hear my screams. I know I'm supposed to be wired for sound, but it only works when I switch it on, otherwise the battery would run out, and the knob is in such an awkward position. I told you it's strapped to the inside of my thigh, didn't I? Frankly, I don't know how I'm supposed to turn it on casually without him noticing while engaging him in conversation long enough for the police to respond. I mean, what would you think if a woman my age started fiddling up her skirt when she was talking to you? Don't feel you have to answer that, Vera. It was a rhetorical question. Insurance won't pay up for a replacement TV and video because they say they aren't stolen but kidnapped, so my evenings are very long at the moment. The radio is all very nice, of course, but it doesn't lull you into a stupor the same way as the telly, does it? I do hope your son-in-law St. John isn't playing fast and loose while Karen is missing. It's all very well him saying he kept switching beds, but the cigarette ends just don't add up, do they, if he's not a smoker? And what will happen to you if she never comes back? Rare is the man who would have his mother-in-law living with him if she didn't come as a part of the bridal package. Still, I suppose he'll keep you while you're useful to him, looking after the children. Anyway, dear, keep your chin up. Lots of love, Irene X.
Karen at globetrotter.com. Dear Leslie, don't let on to the old dears, but I'm staying with Brett and his boyfriend. I ran away to punish St. John. It was bad enough him forcing me to be healthy while I'm breastfeeding, but when I got home, I found suspicious signs and made him admit over a bowl of bloody sheep's yoghurt that he'd been having an affair while I was in hospital. Don't know who with, except judging by the empty tinnies and fag ends in the trash bags, she's a chain-smoking alcoholic. God knows how Ma didn't notice, but she only sees what she wants to where he's concerned. Anyway, I chucked the yoghurt over his head, and I'm not going home until the bastard grovels. Brett says I'm suffering from postnatal depression, but fortunately he can lay his hands on just the substances to sort it. Having a high time. Hope you are too. Karen.
Vera's Voyages at littleshag.com. Dear Irene, in haste, as we are in the midst of another crisis. Howard and Anthony's baby mother Natasha has just arrived in tears, having been thrown out by her husband. I'm not surprised. I always thought he must be an odd man to allow her to do the job in the first place. Goodness knows why she came here instead of sheep dippers. I can only think she feels she has more of a relationship with St. John, or at least with his syringe. Incidentally, despite your unpleasant aspersions, St. John has explained perfectly reasonably that the mess at the bothy was as the result of a Dale's TV wrap party. More when I can think beyond extra bedding, Vera.
Irene at thelimes.heathergreen.com. Vera, get off the phone or stop scurfing the web or whatever it is you're doing. I need to speak to you urgently. Was deadheading the flower arrangement from person or persons unknown and found a card nestling in the petals which I had hitherto overlooked. It says, Dear Mrs. Spencer, trust you find everything as you left it, minus the TV and video, of course. I shall call to see you on Tuesday afternoon at 4 p.m, where I hope we will have a pleasant meeting to our mutual advantage. Yours truly, C. Thorogood. I can't get DC Hogg on the phone either, and I'm at my wit's end since it's 5 to 4 already. Help me! Too late. He's ringing the doorbell. I shall stay very quiet and not answer. Oh, no, he's looking through the letterbox straight at me. If there's no reply when you phone me, call Hogg and tell him to track down C. Thorogood immediately. Yours desperately, Irene.
Irene, have rung and rung as instructed in your last, but just get the engaged signal. Tried the operator, some cretin in a call centre, and eventually, after being rerouted via Glasgow, Milton Keynes, and for all I know another planet, discovered your phone is off the hook. My mind raced far and wide over the possibilities. Perhaps you're involved in a romantic encounter, during which you don't welcome disturbance. I dismissed that one immediately. Or maybe a struggle took place where the phone was dislodged, and you are, as I write, gagged and bound to a kitchen chair. Worst of all, you may have been murdered and are now lying, strangled with your wire, or with blood gushing from a fatal wound, at the foot of your stairs. On second thoughts, it couldn't be the stairs. I've just remembered you live in a bungalow. You'll be glad to know this all rushed through my brain at the pace of what my granddaughter Sabrina calls a nanosecond, and I was straight away on the phone to DC Hogg, demanding he send in the instant response unit. As usual, he had his voicemail on. I suppose it is tea time, but I left a message he won't forget in a hurry. Dear, dear friend, how sorry I am you live so far away. Otherwise I would dash straight round myself with a dose of my veterinarian son-in-law St. John's animal tranquilizer. It has, as you know, proved a lifesaver on previous occasions. Hope this reaches you and does not merely languish in your email inbox until a social worker finds it. Please let me know at once what is happening. I'm sitting at the computer with everything crossed and I'm in agony with cramp all over. V.
Irene at thelimes.heathergreen.com. Dear Vera, have finally recovered from the smoke bomb and finished cleaning up the house with Christopher's help. What on earth did you say to DC Hogg's voicemail? Whatever it was, he was taking no prisoners. There was me and Chris getting to know each other over a cup of tea and fondant fancies when a troop of uniformed officers in riot gear and breathing apparatus bashed down the door with a battering ram without even bothering to knock first, exploded some device that had us both choking and blinded, and when the smoke finally cleared and our eyes managed to reopen, there was Hogg in his underpants, standing in the doorway waving his truncheon. Naturally, I shall be lodging a formal complaint. The phone wasn't so much off the hook as ripped out of the wall. They caused absolute mayhem, trampling through the living room, turning over furniture and throwing things about. My weeping fig will certainly never be the same again. Still, I'm sure you meant well. All for now, as Chris is picking me up in a minute in his Jaguar to take me out to dinner, but I thought I'd better let you know I'm still alive. Just, best wishes, Irene.
Vera's Voyages at littleshag.com. Dear Irene, I'm sorry, I'm sure, if my prompt action on your behalf has caused offence, but your hysteria left me no option. As to the message I left for DC Hogg, at least it seems to have done the trick and got him off his voicemail. I didn't bother mentioning stalkers and flashers, but went straight to armed guerrilla and hostage situation. Your own instant response is, as usual, to misunderstand and misjudge the blameless motives of a true friend. Really, the phrase dog in a manger could have been invented for you. Which reminds me, with all the drama, I may have forgotten to tell you that Rex, my pit bull terrier, was shot last week by your ex-paramour Edward Blunt, who claimed he was worrying his chickens. I imagine they have more to worry about from Edward himself, but that's another story. As if that isn't enough, there have been terrible scenes between St. John, my son Howard and his partner Anthony, and Natasha, their surrogate mother. No one will tell me what's going on, and when I pressed Howard, who usually confides everything, he burst into tears and rushed away sobbing something about St. John's bloody insemination. The last row kept me awake till 5 o'clock this morning. It can't be good for Natasha when she's pregnant. She's moved into my daughter Karen's West Wing turret. Temporarily. Well, Irene, I'm relieved to know you're all right. But whom or what is this Christopher? Is he the mystery stalker? You give no explanation, and yet, after your alarmist missive, here you are on first-name terms, sharing fondant fancies. Were you wired for sound throughout the encounter? In which case, if you're too engrossed with dinner parties, you can simply send me the tape. Must stop. Rex has slipped his surgical restraint and is tearing round the garden after Sabrina's pet ferret. Love and good luck, Vera.
Dear Vera, who is Christopher indeed? Well, he is many things, marvellous things, heroic things, and also things of a personal nature which are very difficult to talk about. Where to start? Well, first, with the mystery of the kidnapped television and video. There I was, away from home in Australia, as you will remember, staying with the girl who calls me mother but who treats me like a slave, and Christopher, not knowing this, had come round to see me here at the Limes. He couldn't help noticing as he was walking up the path that there was a gaping hole where my front door used to be, and just as he was puzzling out why that might be, 2 boys ran out of it, knocking him to the ground and making off with my electrical goods. Thinking naught of his own safety, he immediately gave chase and miraculously caught up with them in Bolsover Close. It turned out that they were children of barely 10 years, so instead of turning them over to the police, he confiscated their booty and gave them a very severe talking to. On returning the stolen artefacts to my house, he deduced that I was not currently in residence and took them to his own home for safekeeping. Beryl, as we know, saw him leaving with them, didn't hear what he was telling her, and jumped to the erroneous conclusion that he was stealing them himself and holding them to ransom, hence all the misunderstandings. He did take my wedding photo, of course, but only to make a copy of it for himself. He's returned the original to me safe and sound. He it was who organised for the cleaners to go in so that my homecoming would be trauma-free. Yes, he is the mystery man stalker. He had been following me merely in the hope of introducing himself at an opportune moment, but unfortunately one never arose. He even tracked me down to the bothy when I was staying there in lieu of you, which is how he came to pull you out of the swimming pool. But of course by then I'd left. Now we come to the difficult part, which I can barely bring myself to write. That which I have kept secret for so long, I now feel like shouting from the rooftops, for out of darkest shame has come shining glory. I can't go on in prose form. I need the subtle nuance of verse. The Ballad of Irene Spencer by Irene Spencer. Once there was a young girl of barely 17 who strived to be a credit by keeping herself clean. Alas, there was an accident. Alas, she caught her toe. For there were things in heaven and earth that she really didn't know. Of how the birds and bees were made, of the mysteries of life, and ignorance being no defence, her parents gave her strife. They wouldn't listen when she said it wasn't her but their friend Fred, that he had thrown her on the bed and sin had reared its ugly head, that she had begged, polite at first, but he had merely laughed and cursed, and as he was doing his wicked worst, what he called protection had gone and burst. Do not judge me, unlike them, or think that I was crude, for there hasn't been a day since then that I have not wept and rued, that a baby grew inside my tummy, who never got to call me mummy, for he was taken from my side as soon as he was washed and dried. Perhaps you have guessed it, Vera. Christopher is my son, and he has found me at last. Yours, in a curious, heady admixture of shame and unbridled excitement, Irene.
Dear Irene, you think you've got drama, shame and guilt. We've had enough here to fill a novel by Dostoevsky. Sadly, I can't resort to versifying, and I must say your last had all the subtle nuance of the Encyclopaedia Britannica, so I will just enumerate the brutal facts. My daughter Karen turned up in the middle of the night and found her husband St. John up the turret with Natasha. My son Howard and his partner Anthony's baby is actually St. John's. Howard and Anthony aren't speaking to St. John. Karen beat up Natasha. Discovered my granddaughter Sabrina begging outside her school at Little Shagthorne. She had her brother Nelson in his stroller, Rex my pit bull terrier on a string, and the lollipop lady Brenda in a headlock. I'm afraid I lost control and slapped her. She slapped me back and shouted she'd already made £5 and I was a stupid 4-letter word to stop her. This, I suppose, is the famed language of the playground. All this just as Dale's TV is about to air the first episode of our documentary A Life with Sheep. There was supposed to be a do round here to celebrate it, but with nobody on speaking terms and Howard and Anthony constantly in tears, a wake would be more appropriate. I'm sorry, my dear, I haven't even commented on your astounding news. You must be on cloud 9. And to think I was the first to perceive Christopher's wonderful qualities. I look forward to meeting him again, now he's officially family. What am I saying? More family is the last thing either of us needs. All my love, V.
Dear Vera, so grateful that you could spare the time from the vivid saga of your problem family. It must take you back to your days in the trailer park to congratulate me on being reunited with my son after all these years. I'm sorry that recent events in your own life have turned you against the family. Personally, I'm more than delighted currently to be wrapped in the bosom of my own. By the by, did I mention that my daughter Leslie is getting married after all? Christopher and I are planning to fly out to Melbourne together for the wedding. Club class, his treat. I'd invite you to come along and help with the catering, but you must already be up to your armpits in the stew you're in at the moment, so I won't add to your burdens. Take care, my dear, with love from your blissfully happy and fulfilled friend, Irene.
Dear Irene, I'm a star. A Life with Sheep is a big hit. Karen and St John are reunited. It's a long story, more when I have time off from dealing with all my congratulatory emails. Dale's TV has never had so many, and they all said how empatholic I was. Natasha has gone to live with Howard and Anthony until their baby is born. Best of all, I've been invited by Dale's TV to host my own morning programme. A magazine with a daily recipe insert. Perfect! Have a wonderful time in Oz. I'm far too busy to come anyway. Love to you all, Vera. P.S. Dale's TV say with my ebullient personality it would be good if I had a foil, someone less colourful and vibrant. So, when you return from Oz, how about it?